will be tomorrow, right here in the Big Easy, New Orleans, Louisiana, NOLA Motorsports Park. The first visit for these high-tech machines around this racetrack. Absolutely pleased to be here on what is kind of a soggy day. Brian Till along with Jeremy Shaw will have all the action for you. Lamborghini Super Trofeo, that Huracan Evo 2 out on track. The drivers trying to get their tires up to temperature. It has been raining here all afternoon, Jeremy, and that has made this racetrack very, very treacherous indeed. You can see the puddles standing.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting for the drivers out there. I think they've done all their practice so far this weekend in the dry. Although I tell you what, the track is drying out pretty well. Because that was a major thunderstorm that went through earlier on this afternoon. So the track seems to be in pretty good shape right now. Some puddles in a few sections, Brian, and otherwise not too bad.
So the question is, what Pirelli tire is on this Lamborghini right now? As you see the spray coming up behind, that might indicate these drivers have chosen a rain tire. But as you said, it's drying in some areas, and it's a very aggressive surface on this racetrack. It's been ground down to ensure that it's smooth in places. The ground here, with the sea level height that it is, basically right at sea level, it heaves a lot when it gets a lot of moisture in it. So track management doing a great job of coming in from time to time, grinding off some of those high spots. They still remain, but what that leaves is a very aggressive surface, Jeremy. And I'm afraid that if you get on a rain tire and the track begins to dry too much, it can really eat into that softer compound.
That's a very, very good point. I think right now it'll be fine on wet weather tires, but in, as you say, minimal number of laps, it's going to be really tricky. It's going to chew up these tires pretty quickly and make things very, very treacherous for the drivers. So I'm sure most of them, assuming they are on wets, I'd be surprised if they're not at this stage.
I would be surprised as well.
But it's going to dry out pretty quickly, and 50-minute race, that's going to be a handful out there.
Yeah, and if you don't get any more rain, then it really is problematic because, as you said, the track continues to dry, and then that rain tire gets eaten up. But right now, on the second of two pace laps, take a look at the field, Jeremy. It's been absolutely packed with talent and packed with Lamborghinis so far this season. Take us through the grid.
Yeah, we've got 30 cars for this race. We should have had a 31st, which would be Justin Price and Richard Antonucci. Unfortunately, there was an off yesterday for Justin Price, and he's withdrawn that car from this race. So Ralph Rowe, the 15th row of the grid, is two drivers that qualify up towards the front, but they're put to the back for an infringement during that qualifying session. That's car number 23, Luke Berkeley, and car number 27, Eduardo Liberati, two Dream Racing Motorsports entrants. On row 14 of the grid is Alan Grossberg in car number 2, alongside Jason Gagne-Keats from Canada in car number 54. Row 13, Scott Schmidt in car number 38, alongside Rodrigo Velez from number 34. Row 12, John Hirschberg, number 13, number 14, the LB Cup pole sitter is Slade Stewart. We've got four classes in this race, all determined by driver experience. We've got pros, pro-ams, and an LB Cup, and Slade Stewart, and the LB Cup pole. Row 11, Tom Tate in car number 64, Michael Manella in car number 4. Row 10, John Hennessy in car number 33, and Patrick Madsen, car number 99. Row 9, number 3, Randy Solari, alongside AJ Mussey, car number 7. Moving forward, car number 45 with Martin Fuentes, number 17, Cam Aliabadi. Claude Signoretti in car number 51, Damon Oakey in car number 8. 12th position on the grid, David Starr in car number 48, alongside Shehan Chandrasoma, car number 19. Taylor Hoffman in the AM pole sitter, car number 9, in 10th position on the grid, alongside Adrian Yoder, in car number 53. Bryson Liu in car number 46, Ashland Harrison in car number 25. Then Gianno Torino in car number 88 and Billy Johnson in car number 71 make up row 3. Row 2 is Brian Ortiz, the Pro-Am pole sitter, in car number 47 for Precision Performance Motorsports. Alongside him, winner last time out at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca is Patrick Kuyala in car number 50 for Gara Motorsport Change Racing with US Racetronics. Front row of the grid from Brazil, Nelson Piquet, former Formula One driver in car number 30 for ANSA Motorsports, but on the pole position for Wayne Taylor Racing in car number 1 from Costa Rica is Danny Formal.
Kyle Marzelli and Danny Formal just continue to set a torrid pace in Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America. They'll see if they can come home with another win today. They left California with one, and they'd like to get one here in NOLA. Lights out on the Lamborghini Huracan safety car in the field through the sweeping turn 16 and onto the front straightaway. These drivers running all over these painted curbs in the dry, but in the wet, they're going to be super slick. Bringing the field down, Marcelli, screen left, that black and blue number one, looks for the flag. It's Danny Formal actually behind the wheel, and they long run down to turn one, tight right-hand corner at the end of it, side by side, three cars. And Marcelli just a little bit loose in the 30 of PK, trying to hold down that second spot, but sweeping around the outside. That's 50. Patrick Cuyala, who was absolutely spectacular at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca, trying to go to the point, Jeremy.
Indeed, from Finland, so he's used to slippery conditions, most likely. But yeah, side-by-side battle for the leader with Danny Formal on the inside as they sweep around that long corner at the far end of the racetrack. But right behind him is Patrick Cuyala and Nelson Piquet. They're hanging in third position. Those three cars covered by, well, what, 2 or 3 car Lamborghini car lengths at the moment, Brian?
Absolutely. And, Jeremy, I got to say I'm impressed with Nelson Piquet Jr., obviously a very quick race car driver, but he hasn't been in a Lamborghini for a while. He ran last year in a few races, but this is the Evo 2. So different braking package on this car, different aerodynamics, and it's a different car than what he last sat in for IMSA Motorsports. And he was spectacular this weekend, running up front in the practice sessions, qualifying on the front row, and now hanging in the top 3.
Yeah, pretty impressive. Less than a tenth of a second he was off Danny Formal's time in qualifying earlier on this morning. That was in dry conditions. But right now it's Patrick Cuyala in second position, who's harrying the race leader Danny Formal as they come into the final couple of corners at the end of the first lap.
PK actually the fastest in the first practice session here this weekend. And looking a little further back, you saw the TPC Racing entry, kind of hanging on to the back of that top 3.
Johnson up into fourth position now. He's managed to find a way past Gianni Torino, who made a good start also. And before the 7 car, that is Brian Ortiz running in 6th position. Best placed of the Pro-Am contenders. Right behind him on the road is Ashland Harrison. She drove a superb couple of events to start off the season a couple of weeks ago at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca out on the West Coast.
Well, that's what we had said that weekend, that it was really the performance, I think, of her career. I've followed her, watched her race for several years now, but they won in round 1. They finished second in round 2 at WeatherTech Raceway, did the 25 of Ashland Harrison and Tom Long. And Long, her longtime driving coach, now being able to run with her in Lamborghini Super Trofeo, running in the Pro-Am category. And they were impressive indeed out on the West Coast. As you look at the number 19, that beautiful gold Lamborghini Super Trofeo Huracan Evo 2 down the front straightaway, and there's not a prettier car out there. Chandra Soma being shown right now leading in the AM category in the 19.
Yes, he started in the second position on the grid in that class. Taylor Hoffman was on the pole position in AM, but he has slipped back 3 or 4 positions on the first lap as Hoffman. Hoffman in the opening round of the season was classified in the LB Cup category. He'll be co-driving that number 9 car with Wesley Slimp this weekend. That is one of several entries from TPC Racing. They were bumped up to the AM category halfway through that weekend, and here he is, having qualified on the AM pole position today, but slipped back in the early stages. So Taylor Hoffman now has some work to do.
Well, you've got time to do it. It's a 50-minute race, a mandatory pit stop in the center of it. So 20 minutes in to 30 minutes in, you've got to do that mandatory pit stop. And yeah, PK into pit lane, that's not what you want to see. This will not count. That mandatory pit stop has to be in the pit stop window, as I said, in that 20 to 30 minutes into the race mark.
And this race was declared wet by the race director. So all the drivers have to start on wet weather tires. They have the option to switch to slicks if they want to during the pit stops, which will occur anytime between 20 minutes and 30 minutes into this 50-minute race. And we're now 5 minutes down.
You wonder if that is what PK has opted to do, pit for those tires right now. Perhaps the rain's going away and he's saying, hey, I can charge forward if I'll go to the slicks. Looking at the weather radar, most of the weather now out to the west, still some showers in the area, but I don't know. I think that would be a pretty gutsy move to go to slicks in these conditions, especially with showers still around.
Yeah, I don't know whether that was a well down my race control thing. I don't see any penalty that was handed down. So,
but interestingly enough, Jeremy, I just watched Danny Formal coming into the hard braking zone in turn 13, well to the inside part of the track where the moisture was, and that looked to me like he was trying to cool those Pirelli tires.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much spray coming up from the cars on the majority of the track. There's a few sort of undulations on that main straightaway. There's some little puddles there, but they're drying out pretty quickly, and the rest of the track is drying out very, very fast indeed. So we can see most of the drivers here are doing the best they can to try and stay on the wetter parts of the racetrack to cool those tires down. There's a spin for car number 48. That is the car it's running in the AM category. It was David Starb who started that car in this race. No, it was Rico Riga. Yeah, no, excuse me. I stand corrected.
No, you're right.
It was David Starb who started. I was right first time. He started very, very impressive third position in that class. He's more regularly used to driving an MX-5 Cup car, a Mazda. This is quite a change from a Mazda to a Lamborghini or a Huracan.
Absolutely, it is a several hundred horsepower difference, and now great side-by-side racing here. The number 9 under attack. That's Hoffman. And under attack was that, I believe, the 45 of Fuentes, just in front, running side-by-side, and Hoffman gets the position, but shows you how raceable this NOLA Motorsports Park is. It's a great racetrack. I've spent some time on it earlier in the weekend, and it's challenging, it's interesting, it's got some super high-speed areas, like right here in the S's, and unfortunately, the S's are the dampest part of the racetrack. They're also some of the most challenging portions of it, and I think, Jeremy, you could probably get by on slicks right now if you run a single line looking at that brake zone into 13 as they come towards us, but the challenge will be trying to make passes. The line, the singular line may be dry, but if you move offline to go around someone, could be an issue, as Fuentes in the 45 trying to make some ground.
Yeah, we've got a change for the lead up front. Billy Johnson is absolutely flying in that TPC race in car number 71. He's just moved past Danny Formal and into the lead of this race. There's battles all the way up and down the field. We do have a change of the lead, and having struggled to meet the front running pace in the first 2 rounds of the championship, Billy Johnson is absolutely flying at the moment. One of the most experienced drivers in this field, but not in Lamborghinis. He's driven just about everything else. He drove for the Ford Chip Ganassi Racing Team in the World Endurance Championship when they ran the Ford GT a few years ago. He's a former champion in the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series as well. In fact, he's one of the most successful drivers in the history of that championship, with 23 wins to his name. And what a clinic he is putting on this afternoon here in very tricky conditions in that TPC racing car number 71. And he is representing all of the cars in this race are representing different Lamborghini dealerships around the country. There is a championship not only for the drivers but also the teams and the dealerships as well, and he's representing the Washington dealership in that car number 71 for TPC. And
representing him very well. He started back in the 5th position. You know, it's funny, Billy, a very talented race car driver, but we haven't seen as much of him over the last several years as we would have liked, as he certainly would have liked. And really the problem was his driver rating, Jeremy. He was rated as a platinum driver, much like another driver that you may be familiar with if you follow IMSA sports car racing. That's Joey Hand. And that platinum rating, the highest rating that you can get, kept him out of rides that he normally would have had, but he couldn't do them because he was too highly rated.
Yeah, that's right. It was a problem for several drivers, and he kind of overcome that now, and he's got some rides as a result of it. But what the job he is doing this afternoon now is extended that lead over Danny Formal last time around to over 2 seconds now to the second place car. Is that Nelson Piquet who is rejoining the racetrack directly behind him in second position on the road. I think it might be with Danny Formal in the blue and black car. In third position, it would appear on the road, but second in this race. And both of those two pulling away also from Patrick Cuyala in third position. Brian Ortiz running in fourth, just ahead, quite some way back. Only a second or so ahead of Ashland Harrison. In the AM class, Tyler Hoffman, having made up that poor start, is now in the lead of the AM class in seventh position, ahead of Martin Fuentes from Mexico.
Can't say enough about the workers here at NOLA Motorsports Park. We're racing right now because of their hard work. This rain has challenged even the best drivers, and some drivers a little earlier today got a little too much of a challenge, moved some Armco out of the way, and the maintenance crew here, the management here jumped right on it, got the track back into racing condition, which is why we're watching these beautiful Huracan on the racetrack right now. And Ashland Harrison coming under attack in her 25. And you said it, 4 different classes of cars, that beautiful gold number 19 that we talked about a little bit earlier. Still having a good run, but like I said, under super challenging conditions.
Yeah, and look, Nelson Piquet must have put on right on the tires, because he just set the fastest lap of the race, a 139.632. The race leader last time around, 152.7. 13 seconds faster was Nelson Piquet Jr. on that last lap. Also into the pits, out of fourth position on this last lap was Gianno Torino in car number 88. So I think he too is making that switch onto dry weather tires.
Well, you can tell the difference, as you said, as soon as they get up to temperature, they're going to be so much faster. The grooves on any rain tire, and certainly these Pirelli rain tires, help them be so spectacular in the wet, and it's a softer compound on the rain tire. You need to have that cool water on them to keep the temperatures down. Otherwise, they begin to get hot and the large tread blocks begin to move back and forth. Take a coat hanger out of your closet and bend it back and forth and feel the heat as the friction builds up. And that's what happens to the blocks. They begin to come apart and the tire goes away very quickly. The slick, a harder compound, gives you a better contact all the way across that tire onto the surface. And that's why they're so much faster. But you got to have some dry pavement to work with to get temperature and pressure in them. And I think we've gotten to the point, as you pointed out, Jeremy, with these track conditions in those dry areas, you can take advantage of them and you can see the difference on the clock.
Yeah, so yeah, for these leaders now, with 37, we've got 12 minutes gone in this race, so 8 more minutes they've got to stay out there before they can put on dry weather tires. If they're losing more than 10 seconds a lap, then that is more than the time that they were losing compared to drivers who were on the slick tires. Last time around for Nelson Piquet, he's also already beginning to work his way through some traffic. I think he's back on the lead lap, but a long way back. His was a 1 minute 42.7. Billy Johnson, he improved his pace that last up around 148.3, but still, that is a big differential between those two. 6 seconds on that last lap.
6 seconds on the last lap, and Piquet picked up 5 positions on the last lap, so he's marching forward. And
Danny Formal is in the pits.
Yeah, and you know, you'd like to make that decision earlier, but it's really based upon the driver saying, hey, I think I need those treads in these certain areas of the racetrack. Piquet is the one who gambled, went early, went big in the Big Easy, and it may have paid off, Jeremy.
Indeed so, and I think that was a really inspired call from Nelson Piquet. So he's probably the most experienced driver in the field. He's shown everything up to and including Formula One cars. So and his father's a 3-time Formula One world champion as well. So he's certainly got the genes there. He's got the right tires on at this stage in the game. But Billy Johnson still turning some good laps here in that number 71 car for TPC Racing. Patrick Cuyala in second position. Brian Ortiz now, he's 13 seconds back, but he's third and leading Pro-Am. And here's a pit. This is Danny Formal's car in the pits, changing tires with Wayne Taylor racing there on car number 1. A couple of other shout-outs. Taylor Hoffman still leads in the AM class up to 6th position now as Billy Johnson brings his car onto pit lane. Shout-out also to Randy Soleri, who's running in 9th position, 3rd in the AM class in car number 3 for Wayne Taylor Racing.
Yeah, Randy, a longtime competitor in Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America action, just had a struggle at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Not the weekend that you would expect, and not the weekend certainly that he wanted there. And so his performance this weekend really kind of back to where you expect it to be. But, you know, we talk about it. He finished 3rd in the first race there, but not a smooth sailing in the 10th in the second race out west, but really seems to have found a better balance on the car, but a little bit of struggle there as you watch the 7, AJ muscle his way by Randy Soleri.
Yeah, and that was Randy Soleri just talking about him. AJ Muss, yeah, he's used to slippery conditions, for goodness sake. He's a snowboarder. He represented the US in the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang. And again, it was very much part of the reckoning for this year's team as well, though ultimately didn't make it. But AJ Muss is driving in the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series in a Hyundai generally, got the opportunity to join this 47 Motorsports team for this weekend when its regular drivers, Nick Parmalee and Wyatt Schwab, were not available. And AJ Muss now in an excellent 8th position in that car number 7 for 47 Motorsports. But meanwhile, out front, it's now Patrick Kuyala as number 14 car leads in the LB Cup category, back in 18th position. That's Slade Stewart for Flying Lizard Motorsports.
And Slade Stewart showed up at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca in his first Lamborghini Super Trofeo weekend, 4th in the first race, 2nd in the second race, and also had a pole in the second race. So he loves these Ercon Super Trofeo Evos, and great job out west. His daughter designed the paint scheme on that car, so he loves to see the car out front. And if you wonder why the pit stops for changing tires don't happen quicker, it's because you're limited with crew and equipment by the rules. Because typically we don't see tire changes in Lamborghini Super Trofeo action, so take a little bit longer, but if everybody does them, it all evens out in the end. Where's PK now? He was 30th just 2 laps ago. With the pit stops on the racetrack and the pace that he has, Jeremy, he's now 17th.
Yeah, he is. But of course, he still has to make his mandatory stop, because the stop he is driving that car solo. There's half the cars in this field have solo drivers, and half of them or thereabouts have 2 drivers. Nelson Piquet will not be changing drivers, but he still does have to make that mandatory pit stop between 20 and 30 minutes into this race. We've got another 2.5 minutes before he will have to serve that penalty. Right now, he's running in the 17th position and moving his way quickly up the field, but he's already a whole minute behind Patrick Kuyala, who still leads. So it was an inspired call by Piquet, but they're still, and last time around he was only 4 seconds quicker than our race leader, Patrick Kuyala, who turned his best lap of the race at 1 minute 47.8.
Well, inside 2 minutes to the pit window, you've got to make that mandatory pit stop. And right now, timing and scoring showing me only 4 cars that have already stopped and gone to the slick tire. The question is, if you're able to hold on to your Lamborghini until that window, you come in for the mandatory stop, you can change tires during that mandatory stop. These drivers may have made gutsy calls and may actually have an advantage because they're going to pay the piper all at one time, Jeremy, instead of twice.
Indeed so. It was a tricky decision to make there, and hats off to all of these guys who are making those difficult decisions. I wouldn't want to be they can make the call from the pit lane and call the driver in to make that tire change. I think it's more likely to be the driver who calls into the pit on the pit to car radio and says, "I need to change tires."
Well, and that's what I was thinking is you see the 50 of Kuyala out in front, the 47 there as well. That's Brian Ortiz. Runs 2nd overall, but 1st in Pro-Am. But like I was saying, I think it comes from the cockpit. The engineer may be in your ear going, I think we can make time now. I think we've gotten to that crossover point. But ultimately, it's up to the driver. He's the one that steers the car into pit in and down pit lane to make the tire change.
Indeed, so you're absolutely right. So another couple of guys who were working their way up the field, Eduardo Liberati and Luke Berkeley. We talked about them right at the beginning. They started from the very back of the field after an infraction during qualifying. Liberati now, kind of 27 for Dream Racing Motorsport, up into 5th position overall. That's the good news. The bad news is he's 27 seconds behind Patrick Kuyala, who leads right now.
You know, what I'm seeing, Jeremy, as well, is a lot of what we call marbles on the racetrack. And I think that's the degradation of that soft Pirelli rain tire really beginning to literally show on the racetrack as we see the marbles kind of beginning to gather on the outside of the line, indicative of that rubber literally being just pulled off. Think about taking a pencil eraser and dragging it across a piece of sandpaper. That's essentially what's happening to these soft rain tires on this aggressive surface here at NOLA Motorsports Park.
Yeah, and we have reached the 20-minute window, so the pit stop window is now open, and the first takers, I think, Patrick Kuyala was already past the pit entrance by the time before, I should say, the 20 minutes elapsed, so he wasn't able to come in on this lap. But a couple of cars a little bit further back, number 25, which is Ashland Harrison, number 27, who was right behind here, that's Eduardo Liberati. They both took the opportunity. They're running in 4th and 5th positions, and they are onto pit lane for their mandatory pit stops.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where PK goes in all of this when these stops happen. Yeah. I was going to say, I think you got to just go ahead and go, all right, we thought it was a bold move and we thought it was going to work, but I need to get in now, especially if I'm in traffic, get that other pit stop taken care of, and then get back out with the other cars that are on the racetrack. I
agree. I think that could be a kind of a good fortune there for Ashton Harrison and for Eduardo Liberati, in that they were able to come in and make their pit stop before the other contenders ahead of them. But as I said, they're almost a half a minute down to Patrick Kuyala, who leads this race. He's now bringing that car into the pits. Also a pit stop here for the LB Cup leader, that is Slade Stewart, in that very distinctive caliber 14.
Lamborghini Newport Beach on the side of Slade Stewart's car as the number 9. That's Hoffman leading in the AM category onto the front straightaway again. And you can tell the degradation pretty extreme on these Pirelli rain tires for the drivers who have elected to stay out. The interesting thing, though, is they have stayed out, Jeremy. I would have expected to see them in the pit lane to look for some relief by putting some new tires on, some slick tires on, as soon as the pit window opened, but that's not been the case.
No, and kind of a tricky one there for a couple of these contenders. Aiden Yoder, he will be sharing that number 53 car this weekend with Jordan Missig, who is another youngster, just 24 years of age, and Jordan is also racing in open wheel cars as well this season. Aiden Yoder started his career, he's only 19 years of age. He started in open wheel but switched to the Lamborghinis for this season. I'm surprised they didn't come in for the second place car now. That's Taylor Hoffman in car 9. His co-driver Wesley Slip has a lot less experience than does Taylor. So for him, perhaps it makes sense to stay out there at the moment. He's leading the AM class. AJ Muss, who is 3rd on the road in car 7, and Randy Solari, who is 4th in car 3. Those are also AM contenders.
Well, you said it. If that driver is out there and is comfortable and it's your quicker driver, leave him in for as long as you can. Again, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, as Randy Solari was a little off the pace there on the racetrack in the number 3. 96-second stop if you're a solo driver, 93-second stop if it is a driving pair, and that's 96 or 93 seconds respectively from the pit in timing line to when you leave the pit lane timing loop. It's not the stop itself sitting still.
That's correct. And I think where's Nelson Piquet? He has completed his driver change. Excuse me, well, he hasn't changed the drivers, but his mandatory pit stop, I think. But how long was that pit stop? A minute. Well, yeah. 03:26 it says here. Not quite sure what that means.
So he's completed that stop.
1 minute 36. So that is, he has fulfilled that requirement. So I think that Nelson Piquet, once the pit stops are completed, might well be leading this motor race. Where's Danny Formal?
Well, Piquet being shown back in 11th right now. And then you look for the number 1 for Vale being shown in 4th.
Yes, but he has not yet made his driver change.
They have not done their driver change. They've not done their mandatory stop, and that mandatory stop for them will be 93 seconds. Should be easy for that team to do. My timing and scoring not giving me the gap between Formal and Piquet, but it's interesting to watch the ebb and flow up the timing chart or down the timing chart as cars in front of you pit.
Yeah, the gap between Formal and Piquet is about 40 seconds. So that is not nearly enough time to overcome that penalty, the pit stop. Mandatory pit
and
stop.
I think the gain, Jeremy, is when Piquet came in and got back out on the racetrack, he was able to eat into the lead of the cars in front. It didn't seem like it all that much because he was buried back in the pack in 30th position, but the laps that he was turning were so much quicker. So he was clawing his way back up, even though it didn't look like it. And it's really going to take all of these pit stops being done before we really get a good idea of where he actually is going to end up. Yoder, Chandrasoma, Ali Abadi, all on pit road. That's one pro. That's the Yoder entry of number 53, and then AM entries. They're in the pit lane. They'll drop back behind PK. Danny Formal, we know he has to stop. Yeah, this is going to be fascinating. A lot of crunching of numbers on the pit box to make that call, and I'm sure that PK was on the radio with his team saying, okay, talk to me math-wise and let me know what you think. When should we make it? And there was probably a fair amount of conversation. And then in the end, it had to be his call. As you see the 13 now on pit road. Hirschberg will be climbing out. And that was a long run for him as he'll hand that car over to Ophir Levy. Third at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca in race number 1, second in race number 2 in the LB Cup category. So they've got a good mount underneath them from O'Gara Change Racing with US Racetronics, their Lamborghini Rancho Mirage entry. Pit stop window closing down, just about a minute and 40 seconds left to give these drivers an opportunity to get in, do that mandatory pit stop. Lamborghini Super Trofeo action from NOLA Motorsports Park in New Orleans, Louisiana. Round 3, Lamborghini Super Trofeo action in 2022. Brian Till and Jeremy Shaw with you as competitors head back on the racetrack, and the shuffling will be complete here in just over a minute. The order restored, and we'll know exactly who is where. And some showers in the distance to the west. You can see how dark the sky is, Jeremy. Hope those stay away.
Yes, I hope so too. We've got a new fastest lap in a race that's set by Loris Spinelli, who's taken over Gianno Torino in Canada 88. And he is now running in Well, it will be the second position, I believe, behind Piquet, who crosses the line to complete his 15th lap in the lead of this race.
I was going to say it worked out perfectly for the IMSA Motorsports number 30 entry. Leapfrog to the front, that bold move early on, make ground on the racetrack, and then when everybody else pits, find yourself out in front. So things settling down, the order settling down. Laura Spinelli now being shown in second place, but some 21 seconds back, and he just completed a race a little while ago here. So Spinelli, in these very hot and humid conditions, going to be a little bit tired as he climbs on board the 88.
And the pit window has now closed. We're 30 minutes into this race. So anybody who makes the pit stop from now on is going to have left it too late. But I think that the last cars came into the pits just before that pit window closed. Tyler Hoffman, who was leading the race overall in car number 9 in the AM class, he's handed that car over to Wesley Slip. That's for TPC Racing. Also in on that last lap with Danny Formal to hand over to Carl Marcelli in car number 1. Also car number 34, that's for Rodrigo Velez in car number 34 for TR3 Racing, who, because he had not yet stopped, was leading in LB Cup.
Slade Stewart with a little on and off there in the S's. Easy to do. It's like I said, that's the area of the racetrack that seems to stay damp for the longest amount of time. And Stewart, no harm, no foul, gets it back underway, and off we go.
Yep, the car's in one piece. Carry on.
Well, and that, I think it's the other great thing about this racetrack here, NOLA Motorsports Park. The vast majority of the tire walls in the target areas where drivers would typically have problems, the vast majority of them are well off the racing surface. I won't say all of them are. You can certainly reach them, and especially with wet grass, but at the same point in time, good to know that they're a fair distance off the racing surface. So you can push a little harder in places and worry just a little bit less. Interesting. I talk about PK. They ran 4 of the weekends last year and missed several of the weekends. When you look through the season, they missed the weekend at Road America, did not go to the World Finals, and just didn't really have the results that I think a lot of people expected out of drivers of their caliber, of his caliber, and a team caliber of ANSA Motorsports. Their best finish of the season was 4th in the second round at Watkins Glen. But man, as I said, I was surprised after that performance last year, Jeremy, to see PK and ANSA with the pace that they showed up with here. And they have been spectacular. And the strategy calls, obviously, right on the mark as well. Lamborghini Broward, happy to see that Huracan Super Trofeo Evo out in front here in New Orleans.
Yeah, and it's Nelson Piquet right now has got a pretty handy lead, 16 seconds over Loris Spinelli, who remarkably last season set the fastest lap in every single race of the campaign. He was running in the Pro-Am class last year. This year he's running in the Pro category, sharing that number 88 car with Gianno Torino. That's a Torino Racing with D Motorsports entry and representing the Palm Beach dealership. Car number 9, that's Wesley Slimp, who's running in the best of the AM cars, taken over from Tyler Hoffman, and he's just been overtaken by Carl Marcelli for 6th position on the road.
But hang on a second, Jeremy. I'm looking at lap times from the last time by, and certainly it could be traffic. We're going to have to watch this. Loris Spinelli in second, granted, he was, that's the key word, 21 seconds back, was almost 3 seconds a lap faster than Nelson Piquet last time by, and has cut the lead down to just 16 and a half seconds.
That's exactly right. I'm sure, I mean, Nelson's got a huge amount of experience, so I'm sure he's managing the car at this stage, but certainly tyre wear is a factor here. We saw tyre wear being a problem when you're running wet tyres on a dry track, but also this track is pretty, you were talking about it earlier, it's pretty abrasive, and tyre degradation, even with the dry tyres on, it is now a dry racetrack, is substantial as well on this racetrack. It's not quite as bad, perhaps. Well, actually, some drivers have already told me this weekend the tire degradation here is worse than it was at WeatherTech Raceway in Laguna Seca a few weeks ago, and that is generally acknowledged as one of the most abrasive racetracks on the calendar.
Well, and you see the number 7, Caleb Bacon, taking over from AJ Moss. Great run for that duo, having never run in Lamborghini Super Trofeo before, being shown second in the AM category, 9th overall. And if you think you might recognize a sports car driver by the name of Bacon, well, you probably do, Jeremy.
Indeed so, because his grandfather, Al, was a multiple-time winner of the Rolex 24 at Daytona, mainly known for driving Mazda race cars very, very quickly in the GTU category. So that family has a huge amount of racing pedigree. His father, Chad, races as well, and they run a team. Chad runs a team in the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series. So, a huge amount of racing experience in that Bacon family. But you talked about a moment ago, Brian, that gap between Piquet and Spinelli. Spinelli has just set the fastest lap of the race, 1:37.822, and that's only a couple of seconds away from the qualifying times. And he's carved another 5 seconds off that lead for Nelson Piquet, with still 14 minutes remaining in this race.
I'll tell you, somebody else is flying is John Capestro Dubets, back second in Pro-Am, just 5.2 seconds behind Tom Long, who leads in the category, but he was 4 seconds faster than Long that time around. So Spinelli chasing down Piquet for the overall lead, Dubets chasing down Tom Long for the lead in Pro-Am.
Yeah, there's still a lot of racing to be done here in this 13 and a half minutes remaining now in this race. And Tom Long, as you said, running in a 10th position now, leading in that Pro-Am class, but only 5 seconds over JCD, who was a lot quicker, as you say, on that last lap.
Well, it's interesting, and you were talking about making sure you take care of the tires. The corners here, especially turns 2, 3, and 4, it's a long duration exit where you're putting the power down and you're really grinding the left side tires, especially in turn 4, onto that kind of back horseshoe area of the racetrack. The left side tires absolutely punished there. And other areas of the racetrack, it's really the left sides that take the beating. And perhaps PK just trying to manage. But hang on a second, Jeremy. Where did Spinelli go?
He's in the pits. And I don't know why. He came into the pits at the end of that 19th lap, as did Billy Johnson for some reason.
That is interesting. We were just talking about taking care of the tires. They go out there and push too hard, trying to chase down the leaders in front and burn the car down.
Yeah, second and third place cars into the pits. So yeah, did they have... obviously they have some sort of issue there, otherwise they wouldn't be in the pit lane. But here is now Eduardo Liberati, having started right at the back of the field in the 29th position, is now up into second position. He's 25 seconds behind Nelson Piquet Jr., but he still has run a heck of a race. And you see third position now is Eduardo Piscopo, fellow Italian, in third position, and another Italian, Loris Spinelli, is in fourth position, but back out on the racetrack.
Good battles all around the racetrack, and with 4 different classes of cars, you get 4 very different experience levels. As Slade Stewart in that bright pink number 14 works his way through the final set of corners, and here is the battle for the lead in Pro-Am. The 25, Tom Long, that Harrison contracting Lamborghini, the 46 alongside of him. Dubets trying to get the better of him through the last couple of corners.
Yeah, this is a fascinating contest, isn't it? And there's battles all the way up and down the field for just about every position out on the racetrack. But Tom Long does lead in the Pro-Am class. He's now got a car between himself and that chasing JCD, John Capestro Dubets. And that number 47 car, it's a teammate to Castro de Betz. In car 47, Sebastian Carrazzo running 5th in the Pro.
Well, you know, Jeremy, de Betz about 2 seconds slower than Long that time. Remember, he had been faster. And I wonder if these guys are just out driving equipment that they have underneath them. Talk about these long duration corners. You've got to conserve a little bit. And I'm seeing these Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2s slide off these corners and leave some big dark marks coming off, even with the traction control. Now the 46, de Betz back up on the rear wing of Tom Long. JCD, as he likes to be called, right there with Tom Long.
Wow.
And it ebbs and flows, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, indeed. I think on that last one, I think de Betz had to do something with some traffic. So that held him up just a little bit. He's clear of that traffic now and right on Tom Long's tail. I'm going to be looking to the inside here as well. No, not quite. Tom Long covers that inside line. No way through there for John Castro de Betz from San Diego in California.
Well, the great thing, Jeremy, right now is you can be a little defensive and let the racetrack be defensive in the other areas. You just kind of cover the areas that are dry and force your competitor into that more damp area of the racetrack and see if you can limit the grip that they have. That time, JCD around the outside of Slade Stewart, and Tom Long elected to stay inside, and I think he just had the better run off the corner. Now down into turn one, tight right-hand corner, and Long slides wide. Castro de Betz is through. That was the lead in Pro-Am.
Better way to look in this race. Just look at the race, the leader's lap time, 1:43 for Nelson Piquet Jr. He's just running a consistent pace out front. He's making sure he doesn't overwork his tyres at this stage. But farther back there, John Castro de Betz is on the charge, now up into 8th position and leading in the Pro-Am class. It's all Pro cars in the top 7 positions. Nelson Piquet, Eduardo Liberati, Eduardo Piscopo, Loris Spinelli, who is closing on Piscopo, who's actually closing on Liberati. In 5th position is Kyle Marcelli, having taken over from Danny Formal. Then Luke Berkeley up from the back of the field. Billy Johnson is right on his tail, battling for 6th and 7th.
Interesting stuff as Caleb Bacon really shining on debut in this series, having a great run, leading in the AM category with his teammate AJ Muss, as we said. Tom Long no longer leading in Pro-Am. Castro de Betz able to take that away from him. PK out in front, managing tires, and Slade Stewart. Just love that car. The 14 leads in LB Cup, the 4 different class leaders here at NOLA Motorsports Park. Inside, 8 minutes to go. You think about it, Jeremy.
I mean, 10 cars on the lead lap, I think, right now.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that cycles through. But I think this shows the experience of someone like PK. And you talked about it, looking at the lap times that Liberati was running earlier. I think he was at risk in burning the tires off of his Lamborghini. And PK, you mentioned it. He's just been steady, cool, calm, collected. I mean, calm enough to make that gutsy call to stop early for slicks, and now just cool enough and really disciplined enough to run the pace that he needs to run to stay out front. There have been those who have tried to charge up and challenge him, but they used up too much trying to get there.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And that perfectly timed pit stop very early in this race on the end of lap 2, PK was in the pits to make that switch to dry weather tires, and he was able to run 10, 12 seconds a lap faster than everybody else and overcome the fact that the pit stop took the better part of a minute to make that, well, it made more than a minute, because he came out actually a lap down. He overtook the overall race leader and has made up all that ground as a result of making that very bold switch from wets to dries earliest in this race. He was in the full 3 laps before anybody else.
Great shot there at the exit of turn 10. You could see all the marbles on the racetrack, and a problem for the 45. And that's going to be a big issue for Baccarella, because he is stuck in that gravel with Yeah, with just under 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, is that going to bring out a full course caution? That was Nelson Piquet Jr. crossing the line there. 137.89 last time, and that's actually his fastest lap of the race, in actual fact. Not sure why he do that.
By a long shot,
he was getting bored.
Lap.
He'd done a 39 earlier on in this race.
But this is the
yellow, full course yellow.
Yeah, we knew that was going to happen. But this is the perfect example of you don't burn up your equipment trying to pull yourself out to a big lead, because this could always happen. It doesn't matter how much you win by. You just want to be the first car to cross the line. And we have watched challengers, as I said a minute ago, really try to throw down the gauntlet, but use too much trying to get there. And PK has been masterful in his control of this race from early on.
He has. And in second position, Eduardo Liberati crossed the line only a couple of tenths of a second ahead of Eduardo Piscopo. That was the order in which they took the yellow flag, but Piscopo was closing rapidly on Liberati. He made up about a second half on that last lap. He made a bit more than that on the previous lap, but now it's full course caution. With only 4 minutes remaining, I very much doubt that we're going to go back to green. Also catching both of those two was the third Italian in a row, with a Brazilian leading, then 3 Italians. Loris Spinelli was catching both of those two, and he had set the fastest lap of the race of 137.8, actually only fractionally quicker than Piquet's lap. 137.882 for Spinelli, 137.896 on that last lap for Nelson Piquet, just showing he has the pace if he needs it.
Well, and you talk about 4 minutes remaining. Well, guess what? There are also 4 weekends remaining in Lamborghini Super Trofeo North American action. We'll leave the Big Easy and head in June up to Watkins Glen, one of the more legendary sports car circuits in North America. Watkins Glen, New York in June. And then in August, another iconic racetrack, Road America. Late in August to VIR, Virginia International Raceway, and then the World Championships in Portugal, Portimao in Portugal in November. That's the remainder of the season for Lamborghini Super Trofeo. And always great to come to these weekends and watch these competitors do battle. And I think that's the great thing about it, Jeremy, is that every one of these drivers competes in the same equipment. So you can have somebody who ran their very first race in the same equipment that a former Formula One driver like Nelson Piquet is driving. You're driving the exact same stuff.
It is pretty cool, isn't it? It really is. And what a race this has been too. We've got, we actually had, we had 10 cars on the lead lap before this full course caution came out, and the cars are still not yet packed up behind the safety car. So I see no way we can get back to green here with only 2 minutes and 20 seconds remaining in this race.
Yeah, disappointing that it most likely will not finish under green, but not disappointing for PK. As I said, a masterful job there of controlling the race when they made that early call to pit for tires. And then you look at the leader in Pro-Am, Capestro de Bet's behind the wheel right now, but shares that car with young Bryson Liu. I think he's just 19 years old. I know I bumped into him at dinner last night studying finance. He wants to be a professional race car driver, but he said, you know what? I got to have something to do if that doesn't happen. And if it does happen and I make a lot of money, well, I'll know what to do with it because I'll have a finance degree. I mean, he's a really cool young kid and he's some open wheel experience, but they won't be disappointed with the performance that they've put in today. And then another group of newcomers there in the 7 for AJ Muss and Caleb Bacon. If it ends this way, hey, showing up for your first week in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo and walking out with a win in the AM category is not a bad thing at all. And then Slade Stewart down in the 14, the car that you absolutely cannot miss. Will he come away with his first victory? He went 4th, and then, well, actually he did win. I'm sorry. He did win at Laguna Seca in round 2. So it would be 4th and then 2 wins on the season and a pole. He's having a pretty good 2022.
Yeah, not bad at all. And that's a pretty good way to start off the season, is it not? Just with still 51 seconds remaining in this race, but yeah, there's no way we're going to be able to get back to green here. I don't think. Where are the cars on the racetrack? They're kind of halfway around the track, aren't they?
Yeah.
So last lap around was a 2-minute 17 lap, and they hadn't even yet caught up to the safety car.
Yeah, so I believe that it will indeed end under caution as the white flag waves, indicating just one lap to go. And that's what we thought we would see happen. But you know what we did see, Jeremy, before all of that? Some really good racing and some really good strategy by the IMSA team to get PK out in front. And then, like we said, masterfully, he held on and managed this race, managed the Pirelli tires underneath him, that Lamborghini Super Trofeo Huracan Evo 2, and just shows the experience that he brings from that wealth of different types of cars, that depth, I should say, of different types of cars that he's driven over the years, applies that here and looks like he's going to leave with the victory. I won't give it to him yet. He does have to make it around to the checkered flag, as do all of our leaders. But barring some very bizarre, unforeseen circumstance, I would expect to see Nelson Piquet Jr. cross the line first here at NOLA.
Yeah, the time has now officially expired, so it will be next time around, and assuming he doesn't run out of fuel or anything daft like that, then yeah, victory should be assured. And that's the first win for Nelson in this class. He's won just about everything over the years. 36 years of age, Nelson, these days. Son of 3-time Formula One world champion of the same name, Nelson Piquet, back in the 70s and 80s. He knew Nelson very, very well as he came up through the ranks in Europe. I just met him when he was racing Formula 3 cars, and just a really interesting character is Nelson Senior. And Nelson Junior, he'll race anything, anywhere, anytime. He's so enthusiastic about the sport. It's a long way from his home in Brazil to come up here, but he's quite happy to do that. And he looks like he's going to come away with his first victory and the victory for IMSA Motorsports in what is his 9th start in Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America.
Well, and like I said, I'm certainly impressed with the job that Piquet has done here, but I'm just as impressed, if not more so, with IMSA. As I said, entered a couple of cars last year, didn't have the results that a lot of people thought they would have, and they have really embraced this new platform, this Lamborghini Super Trofeo Huracan Evo 2, as we talked about, new brake package, new aerodynamic package. They've embraced it and they've learned it well, and in a very short period of time have put 2 very fast Lamborghinis on the racetrack. So hats off to that team for the job that they have done, and their drivers grabbed a hold of those Raging Bulls, and in the case of Nelson Piquet Jr. has taken it to the front, and Nelson Piquet Jr. wins Lamborghini Super Trofeo at NOLA in convincing fashion while we were under green.
Yeah, and it's been, they did score a couple of wins back in 2020 with another Brazilian, Sergio Jimenez, won a couple of races overall for the IMSA Motorsports team, but it's their first win since then. Just a quick look at the championship points, perhaps, with the 3rd place finish today. Eduardo Piscopo and Patrick Kuyala, I think, will have 38 points going into tomorrow's 4th round of the championship. That'll put them 4 clear of Kyle Marcelli and Danny Formal. In the Pro-Am class, with the win today, John Castro Dubets and Bryson Liu will have 40 points. That's 1 more than Tom Long and Ashland Harrison. So super battle there developing in Pro-Am. In Am, also just a 1-point gap for David Starb and Nico Riga, who will continue to lead on 31 points, but just 1 point behind them is Cam Aliabadi for Dream Racing Motorsports, who finished in 3rd position in the Am class in this race, unofficially at least. And in Lamborghini Cup, while Slade Stewart has another win today to extend his lead in the LB Cup category.
Yeah, Slade Stewart and Flying Lizard, new to Lamborghini Super Trofeo, but certainly not new to the top step of the podium for the Flying Lizard squad. And they have certainly put a very good car underneath the rookie Slade Stewart. Great racing from here at NOLA in the first of 2 rounds here this weekend, round 3 and 4 on the 2022 season. Good stories throughout the field. Round 2 tomorrow, and what is sure to be some challenging conditions as well. But we saw great racing today. We expect the same thing then. For my good friend Jeremy Shaw and Brian Till, we'll see you then.